living under the rock, let's say, and just keeping up with the Kardashians, not pay attention to what's going on in the world. What is going on in the world today?
Well, the world is in upheaval, as it always has been for thousands and thousands of years. Human nature has not changed, and so Christians should be accustomed to that and prepared for it. But there is a lot of confusion among Christians in America in terms of what the government, what its responsibilities are in response to a dangerous and challenging world. And a lot of Christians, I think rather simplistically, although well-intentionally, think that, well, we're followers of Jesus. Jesus, during his earthly ministry, was a man of peace. He didn't practice violence. Therefore, that should be our way as well. But we don't want innocent people to be killed. So how can we as Christians support the police, or how as we as Christians can we support the military? And they're not quite sure what the Christian resources are for thinking through those issues.
Okay, so great. Let's go to the journal. So in times like this, why is the journal necessary? I know you answered a little bit, but if you want to give another angle, another take, why is the journal necessary?
Well, this new journal about international statecraft is targeting for its audience evangelicals and Protestants, who still comprise at least half or more of the American population, and yet evangelicalism and Protestantism, despite its 500-year history, has forgotten its history and has forgotten the resources available to it in terms of just war thinking and the vocation of the state and the government's responsibility to defend and protect and provide for the public order.
So, all of these questions are somewhat related, and we can go a little bit more in depth with which one of them. But what role does a specifically Christian biblical voice have to play in foreign policy? Christians in the foreign policy.
Well, we should stress that the Bible, of course, doesn't give us a specific policy counsel on what American foreign and military policy should be in the year 2015. The Bible and Christian tradition give us general principles about what the government's responsibilities are and how we can seek at least an approximate justice in our fallen world. And so the journal aspires to take biblical teaching and Christian tradition and to equip Christians with a realistic and a hopeful way of viewing the world.
And so that ties in perfectly in the next question. Who are you hoping to influence or reach? What is your target demographic?
Well, I like to say our target audience would be a young female undergraduate at Wheaton College, her professor at Wheaton, her parents back home, her pastor back home, and her older brother or sister who are working on Capitol Hill or in the State Department in Washington, D.C. Those are all the people we like to reach who are Christians and want to think seriously about how they should view the world and global statecraft and could use these resources.
And what are you hoping, what kind of influence do you hope to achieve? Specific things you would like to see change on the foreign policy?
Well, before trying to affect U.S. foreign policy, we would like to affect how Christians are thinking in America, and how so many of them are confused. They think they have to be pacifists, or they think they have to be isolationists, or they think they have to, in despair, give up on politics altogether. And we hope to offer a pathway forward that embraces and is based on both realism and Christian hope.
Excellent. Can you touch up a little bit on persecution, ISIS persecution,
Sure.
The current events that are going on right now? So touch up a little bit on that, and what should we do as Christians in terms of foreign policy and other things that we're taking action?
Well, arguably there have never been more Christians, more tormented in more places in the world today than ever before in 2,000 years of Christian history. And some Christians in America are aware of that, some are not. Even those who are aware are not quite sure what to do about it. Do we simply pray? What do we do? And Providence, the magazine, will try to provide guidance in terms of what governmental policies can Christians advocate that would benefit persecuted Christians and other persecuted persons of a conscience and other religious minorities around the world. And to remind Christians, we do have a special obligation to look out for fellow members of the body of Christ, and we shouldn't be reluctant or embarrassed about that.
And my last question, everything's good? It's, we're doing wonderful. The name Providence. you guys came up with the name, were you thinking about the sovereignty of God, that God is in control? Actually, I'm thinking about another question after that. So that's two questions, I promise. Why the name Providence?
Well, we picked the name Providence to, of course, allude to God's sovereignty over all human affairs and human history, but also to point out that God, unlike some of the assumptions within evangelicalism especially, God is not just concerned about us as individuals, but He does watch over communities and the whole church and even nations and governments. All of those instruments are in His hands, and so Christians ought to be concerned and interested in what's happening with government and nations around the world.
So, and my absolute last question is, what would you say to the Christians who, let's say, because there are two extremes, right? You have Calvinism on the extreme, not Calvinism itself, but the Protestantism, for example, and Arminianism to the extreme, which, I achieve salvation by works, pretty much. But what would you say to people who are in the fatalism category who say, well, God has a plan, it's going to happen no matter what I do, so why even bother to try? Maybe I'll just sit around, God's going to rapture me, whatever, right? What would you say to people who say, well, the world is going downhill, God has a plan, what can I do?
Well, I think Christians of all traditions, Calvinists or not, believe that God doesn't call us to just lie on our couch eating potato chips and watching television and being fatalistic. He has put us here for a purpose, to serve Him and to advance His will and to work for a better world and to work for an approximate justice around the world to the extent that is possible. And so that means being Christians locally, to our families, to our friends, within our church, our communities, but also within our nation and globally around the world.
It's perfect. Do you have anything you would like to highlight, emphasize, or add?
I think you covered it all.